Good afternoon to the entire listening community. I'm Carlton Dow, the Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Port Authority. We just concluded a forum segment, and the folks in a few minutes will be going on to view the facilities. But before we get started, I want to introduce who is here with me. To my immediate left is Mr. Larry Belinsky. That's one of the consultants from FRASCA for our airport 3P project that we're discussing. To my left is Commissioner of Tourism, Mr. Joseph Bushelti. And of course, to my immediate right is the Governor of the Virgin Islands, Governor Albert Brand. So we're here to take questions from the media so that we could continue to inform and explain and express to the public why we're doing this and what to expect as we go forward.
All right. A few quick questions. John, first of all, you had the conference a while ago, but what is the interest level, and are you at all certain that this is actually going to happen, the modernizations of the airports?
Thank you for the question. I think the interest level is very high, as exhibited by the fact that we had more than 60 people there and 9 very highly regarded airport operators on a global basis. We had prospective interest from Europe, Mexico, the United States, and Canada. So I think that shows the significant interest in the project and that it is a real project that the industry is considering very seriously.
So I wanted to establish that to then move on with my other questions. While matters were being discussed, I think the EDA Executive Director, described St. Thomas as an opportunity zone, at least this area here, and St. Croix as a trade zone. Opportunity sounds better, right? And it appears as if, again, the St. Thomas district getting a little boost here. Can you explain that to me? What type of benefit will St. Croix see in being described as a trade zone? I know trade is good, but respond to that, please.
So I don't think I know they're not Albert Bryan, Governor of the Virgin Islands. I already mic'd up. Yeah, I have a mic. So the opportunity zone designations there are different federal programs that are running. They're not really being considered that. The economic free trade zone of the South Shore in St. Croix is a local designation. So when these investment zones have different federal benefits to investing in, specifically the opportunity zones that were put on by President Trump and in that administration allow for investment of capital gains into those properties in those zones that you won't pay any taxes on. And then when you cash out 10 years, you don't pay any taxes on the gains from that as well too. So that's a specific. South Shore Free Trade Zone is a designation where you have no custom duties in or out in those zones. And what that creates is the opportunity for small manufacturing and other businesses to bring in foreign goods and then export them as U.S. goods. There's also a hub zone, which the entire Virgin Islands is a hub zone. And those have specific economic benefits under the federal government as well. And that's why they're designated that. But I think for this project, St. Croix Airport certainly has the most potential.
Okay, and so equal benefits all around.
Equal benefits all the way around. St. Croix Airport is actually not, from my memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, I think in the airport borders the opportunity zone under the from the Trump administration.
Right. And also, the St. Croix Airport is in an economic enterprise zone, which again is a more recent federal program, and that incorporates part of the airfield as well as areas of land outside the airfield on St. Croix.
Mr. Dow, I think we discussed this briefly in December, but as this is gaining momentum and things are getting closer, can you state clearly in terms how much of the airport will be controlled by Viper and whoever the operator is? Will employees be affected? Current vendors be affected? What are we looking at as this gets closer?
Well, what you're starting to get into would be negotiations. But overall, a couple of things we want to make abundantly clear to everybody. The Virgin Islands Port Authority, and by extension, the government of the Virgin Islands, will remain the owners of all the facilities. That's one. Similarly, we're talking about some kind of lease operation That's basically what we're doing. Looking for somebody who would actually bill it out. They'll get, at least they'll have a time to make back their money, make a profit. That's the reality. And somehow I want the public to recognize, and I give an example of what we did with the public-private partnership with the same building we're in. It's not a bad word. We're using private money to do something that's good for the entire public. And that investor, whoever those investors might be, they have an opportunity to make money, make a profit. And likewise, at the end of the day, all the property, all improvements are owned and continue to be owned by the government. Now, we've met with all our employees, and that's a logical thing, but the airports still have to operate. That's what we need to understand, but it's the growth that where we're going to be having more employment. In some of these P3, P3 that was done in other jurisdictions, some employees had an option. Some employees decided, you know what, maybe I have 20 some odd years working here. I want to move on. Let me cash out. Let me get my retirement. Let me go work for this private company. With the experiences that they have, no one is going to walk into this airport and know where every nut, bolt, or screw is. So most of the employees, they're going to be looking at the same pool of employees. So we're just talking about people have the opportunity for the investment, and we don't expect that they'll be, the Port Authority don't have no plan to terminate employees wholesale. That's not even intent. One of the things when I made it abundantly clear to Larry and anybody that we're talking about, Larry being our consultants, yes, we are going to negotiate, but we have some lines drawn. For example, there must be a serious level of local participation in any concession operation that's going on. That must be upfront and tantamount to whatever we're going to do. So there will be the local participation and the employment situation, they're going to have to adhere. The Port Authority still would have a governing body, which is important because there'll be some levels of, before they could do X, the Port Authority board still have to weigh in. So to the extent that these things continue to come up, some of it is in the weeds of what we're going to ultimately be able to negotiate.
I think that key to Ernest that we almost understand is like we're adding hundreds of millions of dollars, first of all, in construction. That needs more jobs. You're going to have an airport under construction for a considerable amount of time, which is going to need a lot of support, supplies, materials, people. When you're done, you're going to have a bigger airport. So that needs more jobs. You're probably going to get a private sector investor that has deep pockets, that wants to do things more than just develop the main facility. There's private aviation and aircraft travel is becoming more and more popular. The difficulty of travel in the Caribbean. So when you look at your FBOs and who you're going to bring in, your flight centers and where you're going to park all these jets, there's just a huge opportunity here for more jobs. Coupled with that, all of this is taking place in the midst of the recovery and a burgeoning tourism sector. I didn't mention today, but I mean, during COVID especially, but any Christmas time, this looks like a jet sail lot. There are jets all over to the point where the jets have to park in Puerto Rico or St. Croix in order to be accommodated here. So the potential for earning is there. And the last thing anybody should be worried about is their job. Throughout the history of the Virgin Islands, the government of the Virgin Islands has made a commitment to keeping our people. Right now, we're fighting to keep our people. I ain't gonna name any perpetrators, but there's certain businesses that are opening now and raiding all of our government employees. So we're trying to keep pace with keeping people, and that's what we're more concerned with right now, keeping people rather than letting people go. So.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Judy Schimmel. I'm a reporter. I write for the Virgin Islands Source. I also write for the St. Croix Avis newspaper. This event this morning was described as an industry forum. I'm not familiar with that kind of an event, but I imagine that you are. Could you explain for our listeners and our viewers exactly what an industry forum is and how does it serve the public and the private interest?
So an industry forum is typical in the 3P process of the public-private partnership, and basically it provides members of the industry, and when I say industry, I mean the aviation industry, whether it's airport operators, airport terminal developers, contractors were here today, architects, there were investment bankers that were here, and it provides an opportunity for that industry that is not necessarily familiar with St. Thomas and St. Croix airports, the opportunity to view them and to start their creative thinking in what is the potential that could be done at these airports. It helps them to make a decision as if they are going to submit a statement of qualification. So again, it's the first step in that last P, which is partnership, where they get to hear the support and the interest of the government and the officials down here in the U.S. Virgin Islands in this project, which is critically important because remember, not only are they going to be investing hundreds of millions of dollars in these airports over time, the cost to pursue this opportunity can cost upwards to $1 million for a project like this. So they may be investing because they will have to be creating designs and elements like that as we move into the RFP process. So it's really the first introduction of the industry and the people I've outlined with the government and to see the airports.
I think that's an important point to delineate as well, Larry, that $1 million that they're going to be putting up, that's before they get anything. That's just to participate. So the breadth of what we're doing here, I myself was surprised to find that a lot of these people are not teams. They are people who represent one facet of a team, and they're coming to this to meet other people who they may join up with in order to create partnerships to go after this. Because I guess that's why, because it's so expensive.
Right. I mean, it's expensive because when we ultimately make the decision as to who is going to be the preferred proposer recommended to the VIPA Board of Governors, we need to make that decision based on understanding their vision of the private sector's vision for the airports, both from a capital investment perspective and a business perspective and operational perspective. So in order to do that, they are going to have to engage experts like architects and contractors to lay out their design plans, what those phases of those plans are, and to start to understand what the cost will be to develop down here on the Virgin Islands, because as you all know, developing here is very different than the States with respect to costs, and all that goes into their calculation as they submit their ultimate bid.
In a way, what you're saying is that anyone who decides that they're going to go forward on the bid is basically taking $1 million gamble that their particular group will be chosen to go forward on this project with no guarantees.
Yes.
And that's not true. I think that's important subject, Judy, because that's not only true on the airport side, that's true on the hospital side, on the school side, that when these bidders make these bids, it's not like as easy. It's very expensive for them to participate. So getting the right set of bidders, narrowing the field, making sure that we have the right people bidding on a job is very important, and I think that's the structure that we're using to lead us to success.
Yeah, if I could just add an added benefit to the industry forum is awareness for our tourism product. Symbiotic portion of the relationship is airlift and hotel inventory. And by having a program like this be announced to the world that the USVI is investing hundreds of millions of dollars in our product, which is going to create interest when we go speak to hoteliers as well as airlines to tell them, look, you know, as you continue to look at the landscape in the Caribbean, the United States Virgin Islands is making moves with significant investments, and this forum today provides that medium for us to share with our stakeholders.
And just when I threw out that $1 million number, I mean, they could be spending up to that amount. It could be less. That's just based on experience, what an investing team, bidding team could spend on an opportunity like this.
Good afternoon, Sheldon Turnbull, 107.9 FM The Vibe. Now, one of the most interesting things I heard, and this is just from knowledge of the airport and what was being said, talked about the runway on St. Croix and the length of this runway and able to land any plane basically in the world. But an interesting part, and I would like to see how you guys expound on that a little bit, when you spoke about the additional properties, because many people just look at the fence line for the airport, not recognizing the properties outside of that. And now, as Commissioner Bushelta just referenced, you're talking about somebody developing an airport, but having those properties outside in close proximity, you could also do hotels. What has been the mindset, if any, that you guys have thought about as it pertains to additional development along with this process?
Well, in Cinco in particular, there is some discussion right now about our hotels been going through the process. I think the last little peek I took of it, they were going through some permitting issues in terms of, we had to reach out to the FAA, because I'm glad you asked that, because significant with all of what we're discussing. At the end of the day, when you're talking airports, you're talking about the involvement of the FAA. So with the hotel across the Rolston Airport, that's still moving. Mr. Big spoke today about the discussion he's been having along the EDA route and the finance and these kind of things. But I know that what's significant to me most of all is that when you bring all these kind of people together, one, and secondly, some people who had never been to this territory, coming as far as from Europe and Canada and these places, I don't believe it's because they wanted a trip to the Virgin Islands solely why they came. So that in of itself, the opportunities for hotels and so forth, I know that there is some discussion right now with a person that's developing a hotel right now, that at least after the first, second quarter, and he see that this hotel get off the ground, he expect to train his eyes on St. Croix. And, so that's good news. So when you open up this kind of avenue with all these kind of investors, but more than that in St. Croix, one of the things we continue to talk about is that 400 acres across the street, not only for hotel, but further away, and you could isolate it, that one of the biggest warehouses outside of Cruzan and Diageo, the Port Authority just built it. It's going to probably in the next couple of months, we're going to open it up. So just as the airport goes, the cargo operation can expand in a huge way as well. So it's not just the hotel opportunities. It's
also to the hotels in St. Thomas. You got Beachcomber, which is out for bid. I don't know if that came in yet. You got Emerald Beach, and then you have, what's the one on the end? Yeah.
We have, Lindbergh Bay. As a matter of fact, all these airports now, based on some information we saw, are slated for major upgrades. And the RFP, like the governor mentioned, we believe probably in the next maybe month and a half, that would be concluded one way or the other. So it's quite a bit of movement.
Now, within the actual plan, and I know in speaking with Director Dow and speaking to Commissioner Bushelta and hearing different commentary from the governor at different times, there are certain specific things that you're looking for in the development of the airport, one being the jet bridge, which everyone talks about. And have you guys put anything specific, as you said, there's a line in the sand, has there been anything specific that these individuals, these entities that do win must have in place?
Now, that we want the creativity of these folks as well. Most of who we are talking to, they have done this in all parts of the world. And we have a unique situation here that folks must come to the airport a minimum of 3 hours in advance. That opens up serious opportunity from not just the concession standpoint, shopping. There's some people, I mean, the governor said he loves to hit the Miami shopping thing when in the airport, but shopping, there might be opportunities. There was way back, God bless him, Derek Hodge. Prior to his passing, there was a whole big move and using some part of the airport for gaming opportunities. So we have 3 hours. 3 hours we have them captive. And that's a reason why the governing body and the Port Authority, from the time the top floor of the King Airport became vacated, people have come to us and said, I want to put something up there. We refrained from doing that because we wanted that entire area to be emptied so that folks who come in to have a discussion could have the opportunity to develop, whether it's stores, restaurant, I mean, just name it, people from shoe shining, for, whatever you see on any other airport. But we know food. And I think, lastly, they had one of the new people that went in on the airport, King Airport, who have a little, they were doing a little wine and coffee kind of operation. They started out bringing some, and as simple as this may seem to some, we invited them to start to use some local folks. They have a gentleman, that you guys call him the mass man. They couldn't keep enough of his product. He can't keep up with the product that they were asking them inside the airport. You know, he had the CMAS and he had the drinks. And of course, they started to, I know Senator White always talk about, but they can't even get party in there. Well, they put 300 party in there a morning, and by the afternoon they were asking who could provide another 300. So while we might think these things are not, you know, they are simple, it is not. And that's what part of what we sell. So anything that we do there must be some kind of local restaurant. You should be able to get some boiled fish and fungi in our airport. You should be able to get some green banana someplace in our airport, because that's what identifies us and separates us sometimes from the rest. The hamburgers know how it's come.
Yeah, I just want to support again what Mr. Dow, Executive Director Dow, is saying. One of the things that we try to continue to sell is the experience. And we've all traveled. You go into a terminal that's well done, with options to eat, to shop, to enjoy a libation or two. There's less stress. You're comfortable. You get there early enough. And some people make it a part of their trip is to get to the airport early to buy whatever they want to buy. And I think for us, from a competitive standpoint, anytime we can enhance the experience when people arrive in the territory and when they leave, that's a win for us compared to much of our competition. So I look forward to the project bringing these kind of options. And we have already seen the Port Authority implement some of them in our departure lounge in St. Thomas and St. Croix already. And we already see the appreciation in travelers. So this is just the next step for us to make that improvement along the lines of visitors when they come in.
You know, Sheldon, I just want to also mention when we talk about stuff inside the airports, and I like how earlier the governor kind of wrap it around with the EDC and all of that. You know why? Because when people purchase on their way out, cruise and rum, and when they purchase Captain Morgan and these kind of brand and leave our territory, that's significant. Because as they go outside the territory, these spirits become so popular and more popular. And all of us should know by now, especially folks in the GRS system, how critical that alcohol that leaves this territory and sells in the mainland, how important that is to even our being.
Lastly, I think that what we discount all the time is duty free. I mean, when we shop in the Virgin Islands, we don't even think about it. But as soon as we go to the States, you know, everybody's had the experience where they walk up with this, how much for it? It's $100. And they come and they say, no, it's $100 and $109.10. And you'll be like, well, oh yeah, taxes, right? We say duty free all the time, but I think we really need to get in the habit of saying we're in a tax-free zone. And people, you know, it may not mean as much to you when you're buying a soda or you're buying a little thing from a store, but when you're buying a $10,000 Rolex on Main Street or in our airport, that's a huge difference. There's tremendous, when you go to Miami, there's duty-free stores every other gate selling products, cigars, liquor, perfume. We need to be doing the same thing when people get in here, reminding them that, hey, you're taking this product tax-free. That's an incredible saving. So you're at a 9-10% saving on any purchase, major purchase in the Virgin Islands.
I set my rule for 3 questions, so this is my third and final. When you made your comments, Governor, you referenced all the different things that are happening in the territory. And it seemed to, as I looked through the audience, it seemed to kind of catch the attention of those who may be investing, because as Commissioner Boshelter said, all of these things enhance their opportunity for, and let's be real, making their money back and then some. Because at the end of the day, it's a financial gain or financial risk that they're taking to get a return. So I heard when you made all the references of things that are happening and the projects that are going to be taking place, indicating the monies that are coming into the territory. You feel, and to Mr. Zelinsky, do you feel that is going to be an extra little kick to get those individuals to make that step?
Absolutely. You know, there's money to be made, and you know, money is lending at like 6-7% now. I was looking at the numbers particularly for St. Croix, and I noticed 2019 placements were really high. 2020 we had COVID, 21, 22 we climbing back to what the employments were in 2019. But guess what? The refineries closed. Them employments in 2019 were people traveling from Louisiana to build the refinery. We are almost to that level now, and we don't have any refinery open. So that means that tourists, guests have taken a considerable jump in terms of coming to St. Croix and enjoying what we have in St. Croix. That is economic progress. When you're telling these people, I mean, you know, today's world, you have attorneys, you have bankers, and then you have these airport specialists. But all of this investment to be made, people are going to need liquidity, they're going to need legal help, they're going to need contractors for construction. Everybody's paying attention, and my job, wherever I go, is to remind people that, hey, we're a small place with a lot of development to do, and we need help. By this year, it's 23 now. By June, we're going to have so many projects tied up. Right now, our projects are so tied up, you can't find people to even bid on anything under $5 million. And we got a lot of little projects that need to be done too. So it's our job, every one of us, to go out and tell the world all the time, listen, we're open for business, we're expanding, we're building for growth, we're creating the housing opportunities, and we're doing the things to make our community ready to take advantage of these opportunities.
And I would just add to that, Governor, one of the ways that the airport, whether it's governmentally operated or privately operated, generates revenue is by increasing the number of passengers that flow through it. And in order to attract more passengers and more growth in that area, the airport works in a collaborative fashion with everything that happens in the Virgin Islands. The more hotels and rooms that are available means that there are more passengers that could be supported here. We don't want to be in a situation where people want to travel through the airport, but they can't get a reservation, a place to stay. So as the tourism industry and the business industry grows, the airport will be there as that gateway to bring in more and more passengers.
I want Commissioner Bachelder to speak to the importance of this expansion in terms of the window in which we get passengers between 12 and maybe 6 o'clock, the congestion problems, the baggage problems, and how we actually could get more planes here, but they want to come in that window, but there's nowhere for them to park in doing that. So
yeah, I think that's a great point for the St. Thomas Airport.
Right.
Is that tight window of when the flights leave, predominantly the Eastern Seaboard, arrive in St. Thomas. And one of the things that many of us sometimes overlook is that all of these jets coming in, they're doing a turn, most of them within 1 hour. So there's a tight window for that asset to get back to the mainland and move to other places. And all of them have in mind the same thing. We need to, and most of them, and we learned from Southwest why most of them do have a hub system, right? They all fly most of the passengers into the hub city, and then the hub city takes them into the destination, and they return back to the hub city and then go back to the places. So there's a tight window to make the connections into whatever that destination is, whether it's JFK, Atlanta, Miami, et cetera, to get to the USVI and then turn around and get back, and then have those passengers that are on connect to get where they're going. So it's not just back to those main airports. And I think one of the things that this expansion does, which is why I'm very optimistic and pleased with the process, is it allows us to increase capacity, which then allows that extra 1 or 2 or 3 flights that come in between 1 and 2, and that extra flight that comes in between 2 and 3. And all of that is revenue for the airport and the partners in terms of head tax and the passengers, but it's also direct revenues for us in the territory, particularly us in tourism, which we receive our funding from the hotel occupancy tax. Of course, once the people move around, then all of us in the community benefit from ground transportation to restaurants, to the activities on the beach. So this particular expansion on both airports is a possibility for us to become not only more competitive in terms of bringing more flights in, but it puts us in a position now where we can be more aggressive, as Larry mentioned, to go out and get the business, right? Because one of the things you don't want to do is overmarket yourself when people call and they're like, I can't find a room. I can't get a room. So that not only hurts you for that particular visitor for that trip, it hurts the destination, because the next time they're going to say is, I'm not going to mess with St. Thomas or St. Croix, I can't get a room. So I think that this puts us in a very competitive position, and I think what it also supports for us, especially from a tourism standpoint, is growth. People invest in growth. So if they see us at the roof of our growth potential, they're not coming. But if they see that there's potential for growth down the line, which is what we saw today in the meeting, in the hang-up, with all those people, they see growth, which means, a higher return on their investment if they do it right.
Yeah, I think that you need to hammer that back too in St. Croix, especially where you now have a private sector operator that have a bottom line, have debt to cover, that's interested in bringing as many people through the airport. That's their full-time job. And what you're getting is, you're getting that these people do this for a living all the time. That's all they do. So we're getting an industry expert who's bringing the cash, bringing their experience, and bringing their inventory to St. Croix. And I think that's important for us as we grow and we expand the airport, and then looking at how we could maximize in every inch of the property that we negotiate with them to lease.
And I think the commissioner said something very important that we should not just gloss over. Obviously, all passengers to the territory are critical to the tourism business, whether it's cruise or air. But keep in mind, when that air passenger comes in, they're staying multiple days. They're staying in hotels. They're going to restaurants at night. They're going to all the tours. They're taking multiple taxi rides. So while there are revenues generated to the island from the cruise passengers, when you look at it in totality, the air passenger is a critical lifeline to the tourism and restaurant and other businesses shopping here on the island because they're here longer.
Well, so two questions I wanted to ask, and I think those are important items as well. I don't think one has been quite addressed yet, especially on St. Croix. So we speak of the issue, and Larry mentioned it as well, the tourism commissioner, of hotels to stay, right? Capacity to have tourists come to St. Croix in particular. And I'm wondering, Governor, I remember the first time we spoke of a hotel. I'm wondering, as a collective, have we done enough to attract? And I'm wondering, have we done enough to attract, say, a hotel? We haven't had a new hotel on St. Croix in a very, very long time, and that is one of the biggest bottlenecks I believe we have. And so that, I believe, is a critical issue for St. Croix. We have an expanded airport, hotels. What's happening?
When you look at the problem, the first question is, have we done enough for hotels in St. Croix? Yes. We've been to Chico. We go to the Hotel and Chris conference every year looking for hotel developers. We've courted, like I would say, we kissed many frogs that haven't turned into princes in terms of hotel development, but you got to look at what we're doing on the Key. So we're expanding the hotel development there, King Christian and selling King Alley, and the expansion going on there, bringing Hibiscus back on, working with Army Corps and trying to get the permit for Malago Bay. There's still rumblings and we're still working on that. We have been averse to talking about a lot of our hotel development because it's like the great unicorn that never comes until we have something firm. You don't even hear me talk about the hotel at the airport because it's almost like you jinx it if you talk about it. But I think in St. Croix, what you're seeing is steady tourism development. And one of the things I want to mention is that's good for local people to be able to get involved and make the investments. You see what's going on in Frederickstead. We're tripling the amount of cruise passengers. Now we lack capacity in terms of excursion. We're working feverishly to help create things for them to do. So slow development of our tourism product on St. Croix is good. And I think the numbers here that we're moving up are saying to people, listen, those people that were coming for construction, they're gone. But we're still getting the numbers up there. That means that people are coming for enjoyment and relaxation. So we'll continue to do the things. But the reality of the situation is construction in the Virgin Islands is probably 8 times what it is in Santo Domingo or St. Lucia or anywhere else right now. Labor in the Virgin Islands is probably 10 times what it is any place else. Regulation is 10 times way more expensive. So what we're focusing now is bringing back our properties that we already have that are underperforming or have not come up to yet. That includes the Divi, which can't find people to come out there to work. Grapetree Shores just opened. Getting the Marriott here in St. Thomas up. Getting Mahogany Run active. Saving Carambola Golf Course. All these things are things that we're actively working on. Sugar Bay, bringing that online, making sure, and I want the public to make sure, as I say this, that we take an active part in what happens at Canal Bay, because we're taking comments right now, and I want personally, I haven't taken a position, but I'll tell you personally, I want a luxury resort back on that property. There's opportunities to do that and still engage the community and have things going on there. So all those things, I think we're working on it. I don't know, defer to me.
And I just want to say on East and with regards to the question, we are doing things, and it's on us as the tourism department and on the properties to market themselves as new properties, right? So many of these properties, King Christian, the DV, Taman Reef, I mean, these are properties that were there before, but they are totally renovated, right? So it's not the same property as before. I think the second thing to keep in mind is that we are actively promoting St. Croix right now. We have a promotion that's going on right now that allows for $200 rebate in airfare per person into St. Croix, in addition to a 10% or more if you stay 5 nights and they participate in hotel properties on St. Croix. So there's more collaboration happening with the existing hotels in helping them help themselves in terms of their marketing, right? So people have to know, right, that you made these changes and what's going on, because that in itself helps, right? So from a tourism standpoint, we market the destination from a macro level. But if you're talking about a specific hotel property, we can market on our website, but they also have to go out and say, hey, these are the changes in the property. This is why, for example, Taman Reef is now marketing themselves as a 4-star versus where they were before. But it takes a partnership to keep it with the team for that to happen. And of course, lastly, where you really see the changes, once these improvements are communicated to the airlines, then they start sending more people because the demand is there from a tourism marketing, and they recognize now that there are properties and inventory to stay, then they send more lift.
The shared market is the last piece of that. I think that's the greatest opportunity and has allowed St. Croix to get more airlift, right? So Airbnbs, the increase of those in St. Croix, and the type of visitor that's visiting wants an authentic experience in St. Croix, would be interested in. I've seen people all the way down in Times Square in Airbnb. They want that real experience, so that has helped. That's going to help us generate the airlift that we need to get that big whale that's going to do a 300-room or so hotel.
Ernest, one of the things that, to me, that all of us, as we take a step back, and why I appreciate working with the governor and the other folks here, is simply this. We have to understand these issues that we're talking about or we're dealing with is going to outlive any one of us here, and they're bigger than us individually. And to me, the thing that I continue to look forward to is that we're able to bring all these pieces together regardless. And it's not no egotistical right for nobody. We understand that EDA plays a role, tourism plays a role, clearly the administration plays a critical role, and even, so when you look today, we had a chamber here, both chambers. We've been in contact with the airlines, the hotel association. So when we realize that this is not an I situation, but collectively, so nothing is impossible for us to accomplish. I think the governor and the port, and we had a great day yesterday. And maybe the governor could speak just a little piece. Yesterday was a great day for the territory. And in St. Croix, I laugh because when they have 5 cruise ships in St. Thomas, you know what? Every talk show would light up. Sheldon them in the morning, Mr. Commissioner, all of them would light up. Lord, what I'm to us in St. Croix? 5 of them I got over, we can't get one. No. 2 ship days in St. Croix happening, and some people say, oh, Jidambri, where are I sending all these people? So, but we've got to continue to grow and to build. So what's happening in St. Croix is, and when we talk about these public-private relationship, that's a classic as what has happened and what is to come. Because we were able to get an agreement with Royal Caribbean. They're triple among the passengers. And now, you know what, interestingly, when we talk about these kind of things, not that they just triple passengers. When you look, we get a call from Carnival, say, listen, we come in, we're going to make a couple calls in St. Croix. Now we have Virgin Voyages making like regular calls in St. Croix. That was never a part of the 140, that Royal Caribbean thing. But I think yesterday was a great day in terms of the officials that was here from Royal.
Well, I mean, it's just once again Royal Caribbean committing to our product, cruise product in St. Thomas and St. Croix, and willing to invest in. I don't want to reveal too much, but really putting their plans to invest in us, and me reassuring them that no matter what, we're going to be in that commitment. I think key to that is, especially in St. Thomas, is where we're going to establish this berth. I think we've all but abandoned any attempts to put another double berth in the middle of the harbor. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. We're looking at Crown Bay now and developing that area. We're cleaning up Crown Bay. to move some of those facilities over to the other side of the mountain and looking to relocate our people in terms of the mechanic shops and that one and whatnot, doing it in a constructive way that really promotes, you know, good for everybody, win for us, win for them. And it really looks positive. I'm not going to be the way to say, we want you to let the cat out of the bag, but good things ahead. Prosperity.
Could we allow Ms. Schimmel to ask her question, because truthfully, Larry and myself are going to have to run over to the terminal, those folks. And the good thing is that we speak, those folks are out there throughout our facility. And they're going to be doing the same thing in St. Croix. And that was a logistical nightmare. You see all these folks here? The Port Authority, I'm coming in, I really appreciate the staff I have, because they logistically didn't have the flights. They make it happen. Bulky, we want to thank him very much. Sean Miller, whoever we could have found around to transport all those people you see there tomorrow morning, so that we could do the same thing over in St. Croix.
And we in the press want to thank
Sorry?
you, gentlemen. And we in the press want to thank you, gentlemen, for making yourselves available to answer our questions. And so, having said what you said, Mr. Director, my last question is, what about the tour? What do you expect to do with your prospective developers while you're on the tour? What are the things that you want them to see? What do you want them to think about as they go home and decide whether this is a viable plan for them?
One thing I know I want them to see is that they'll see it, because they came in last night. They know they have to walk down the stairs, whether it were raining or shining. So they will see the need for us to establish those kind of our jet bridges. But more than that, what they will go and see is an empty shell of, see the opportunity for them to invest and make a fair rate of return, while the government of the Virgin Islands and the Port Authority still continue, and I want to underscore, to be the owners of all these properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.